thanks for joining me. I'm Kira from KiraWoods.com. This is part 2 a video that I'm putting out to look at the elements. I've had a couple of people send me messages asking if I would add some additional content because they're struggling with understanding how the swords are in the element of air while the wands are in fire. Now, I completely understand why that may seem a little confusing, particularly since you think of wands as being fire, and you might think of fire as being sort of anger and expressions of anger and conflict, which is what you find with the swords. I guess the way I look at it is that swords they're metal. It's metal. It's therefore directional. Swords are about how we communicate. They're air because how we communicate is so important to our lungs. So the lungs are a part of the swords family. So you've also got the swords are about the mind. And air is in relation to the mind because think about how quickly air moves. And air or wind, some people call it wind. And so think about how the mind is, also, the mind is quick. It's about, think of lightning. It's part of the mind is a part of the lightning element. And so think about how lightning is formed. And also you might want to think about, so yes, it's about thoughts. It is about anger. It is about conflict. But it's also about wisdom, and how we use our mind to process information and how we think. We also use our mind for the way we might then communicate how we think or communicate our creative expression. So none of the elements work in isolation. So of course there's a relationship between the air, the swords, and also the wands, which is fire. So for me, it fits well, like in the Rider-Waite deck, that the wands are fire, because I think of fire. Fire is creative energy. It's that spark. Wands are a vessel to hold that energy, and it's around our physical presence. It's around our physical energy, which is to do with movement. And I think of the wands fits very well in that respect. So for example, when I was thinking about somebody who asked me this, I'm thinking, okay, look at the Magician. I think you really understand why wands are fire if you look at the Magician. So here the Magician is reaching up and connecting with source and drawing down the energy that is needed to then manifest that which it is going to be manifested in the world. But it is the drawing down of the energy into the wands, this wand here, that I think really signifies it's like the power related to that, which is very fiery. You know, I think of in astrology, I'm thinking of Mars energy, and Mars is very much around using your force to get somewhere, which may come out in an angry way. So I can see why, people will be thinking, oh, but that sounds very sword-like. And it can do. As I said, they kind of work together. All the elements work together. But I do think of the wands as being that vessel for power, for strength, which is the element of fire. And I do think of the swords, so if I'm looking at the Justice card, as being that element of air to do with movement, direction, reflection, double-edged. Are you using your mind to enhance the situation, or is the mind holding you back? Are you in a state of the mind as perhaps leading you astray or giving you a false impression or getting caught up in the mind, you might think about. The other thing I like to reflect upon when I think about these two elements in particular is the swords kind of are, they get a bad rap because they can very much be identifying conflict or challenge. But also sometimes it's around if you use your mind to look at the potential or the manifestation of conflict or challenge. It is the mind that is going to help you problem solve, to analyze, to reflect upon. It's the mind that is going to help you find another path. When we're in that sort of that reactive phase of what I think of fire energy, which is that Mars energy, we tend to be more responding maybe from a raw perspective. And so we are more likely to feel hot and engaged. And then, yes, that may come out in terms of how we speak or how we think. But it starts out with that burning of the solar plexus, feeling really, intense about something. And that intensity may mean that you'll create this amazing piece of artwork or this brilliant creative project in your workspace. But it also might be that you lose it, and that that anger, spills out and you action it in a way that isn't so healthy, which is then going to bring in some of that swords energy. But it is that fire energy is that will to win. It's that determination to succeed. It's that sense of drive and passion and engagement in something competitive. That's sort of your one sense. It's that inspiration. It's your willpower. And so it's that force. The other thing about the wands for me is that, actually I asked one of my clients once when they saw a wands card, what did they see? And they said they thought that the wands looked like matches. And so I thought that was good. So again, they immediately identified with fire. That worked for them. So you might want to sort of think of what other imagery of fire will help you perhaps understand this wands energy and why wands is related to the element of fire and swords are related to the element of air or wind. I think you could also think around the fact that there are 4 main elements in life. And I guess for right away, they it's like, yes, you could say there's an interchangeability of, and it doesn't really matter, to my mind. It's like you decide what's right for you, and particularly in reference to the deck. But I particularly do like to put air with the swords and wands with fire, and pentacles is earth, and cups, of course, in emotions or water. And I think a lot of people can identify with cups more easily. But I think if you sit and really ponder, reflect upon it, and really think about it, and build a sense of connection. And if you decide to flick it all up, as I said in my previous video, some people like to think of the coins or the pentacles as fire. And particularly if their deck is a coin-based deck, or it's identified as coins, I think of, coins are forged in the fire. And so they think of that as being fire, and they like to think of the wands as being earth because the wands are planted. The other thing, as I said, is the interchangeability, is I think of air as movement, and I think of, therefore, like in order for a seed or a tree to replant itself, or a seed to gets blown around. And it's through that blowing around. We all know how those weeds grow in the yard. It's the wind comes in and then it lands, and then, the life force that comes up for this seed to, it's the fire in it that pops it open, the sun, whatever. And it's through that fire that then this life force evolves. The other thing I think when living in Australia is a lot of our native plants will not grow without fire. These seeds are so hard that they require that intense burn to populate. So there's certain, for our sort of native, some of our native species to continue, that we actually do deliberate burning so that can happen. And that's because otherwise they won't populate. So I hope maybe that's helped clarify a little bit of some of the questions I've been getting around the elements. Sit with it yourself, explore it, send me your comments. I'd love to hear what you think. That's the joy of the tarot. Everyone has their own reflection on it, their own insight, their own wisdom, and go with that and share that, because that's a great way for our community to learn and evolve and have new insight. So thanks very much. If you'd like a private reading, of course, please go to my website at kirrawoods.com. Have a great day. Talk to you soon. Bye.